That's what I'm talking about. This means something to me, man.
Spider-Man Brand New Day. Absolute cinema. I genuinely can't remember the last time I walked out of an MCU movie feeling like the people behind it understood exactly what fans have been begging for. From the opening minute, Brand New Day felt like a passion project. Tom Holland and director Destin Daniel Cretton put everything they had into the filmmaking, and most importantly, Peter Parker's story. This doesn't feel like another big budget MCU product designed to advertise 5 other projects. For the most part. It felt like a movie made by artists who genuinely care about Spider-Man and had an actual story they wanted to tell. After the MCU's track record over the past 6 years, it was unbelievably refreshing. Sadly, the same can't be said for my favorite superhero brand, DC. James, what the hell is going on? Looking at DC's biggest project of 2026, Supergirl, I'm reminded that their problem was never as simple as making better movies. I loved last year's Superman, and projects like Clayface and Lanterns looked promising, but Supergirl exposed a much larger issue. DC may understand the kind of universe it wants to create, but it still doesn't seem to understand how to convince audiences to care about that universe, and thus, some of the characters inside it. How did one movie understand the audience it was made for, while the other seemingly assumed the audience already existed? What do both films reveal about the completely different ways Marvel and DC are responding to years of criticism? What did Spider-Man just expose about Supergirl? Alright, so all of you have heard the term fan service before. A lot of films have been utilizing it for years now, but it's sort of gained a reputation as a negative towards a project when I think that's not entirely fair. Fan service is just a writing tool. If used correctly, it can give moments that don't do much to advance the story so much more emotional or thematic weight. There's also fan service in the ways Brand New Day tells its story by giving the audience what it's wanted from the MCU Spider-Man for over a decade now. You want action and swinging scenes with sauce? You got it. You want practical sets and characters as opposed to a CGI fest? You got it. You want a grounded story where Peter actually deals with the burden of being a hero? You most definitely got it.
Why, that's very good. Yes, I like that.
I and many others questioned how they were going to juggle so many characters like Yelena, Hulk, Punisher, and Sadie Sieg's character, on top of things like Scorpion and the Hand. Despite all the cool cameos and comic booky things appearing on screen every 5 seconds, it all serves the function of telling Peter's story. All of the cameos aren't just there to remind people this is an interconnected universe, but they all serve the plot in some way. Because Peter is being Spider-Man all the time, he's suppressing his human desires, causing the arachnid side of his DNA to evolve him into something else. All of the characters I mentioned play into this theme of change, trauma, or identity in some way. Even though it could potentially feel overstuffed, everyone serves these fundamental ideas. Supergirl, meanwhile, shows what happens when a movie has exciting ingredients but fails to make them serve its protagonist. Kara is already a harder sell than Spider-Man. Most general audiences have little attachment to the character, let alone this version of her, and yet she's the second film in this cinematic universe for some reason. That means the movie needed to establish who she is and why we should care almost immediately. And frustratingly, it had everything it needed to succeed. Krypto is dying, Kara is emotionally detached, and her backstory involving the destruction of Krypton explains why she drinks and avoids connecting with people. The problem is the movie waits until over halfway through to give us that last bit of context. The film tries to make up for it by giving Kara a carefree personality and making the audience build up questions as to why she is the way she is. It seems like they wanted Kara to have a Jack Sparrow type of appeal, reckless, unpredictable, and morally questionable, but charismatic enough to remain entertaining. Except she isn't funny, clever, or charming enough to carry the movie. So for most of the runtime, we're watching this drunk bitch fuck around the galaxy while her dog is dying. Yeah, what a fun film. Brand New Day also centers on trauma, identity, and emotional isolation, but it establishes Peter's conflict within the opening minutes. We understand what he wants, what he's avoiding, and why he's losing himself. Even with the character audiences already know, the film immediately rebuilds that emotional connection. So why does Supergirl wait until halfway through Kara's debut movie to give us a reason to care about her? The supporting characters don't help much either. Jason Momoa as Lobo is fun to see, but we learn almost nothing about him. His motivation motivations are surface level, and removing him would barely affect the story. He isn't there because Kara's arc requires him. He's there because Jason Momoa playing Lobo generates hype. Krim is even thinner. The film makes him violent and edgy, but he doesn't meaningfully reflect Kara, challenge her worldview, or represent her fears. He's simply evil because the story needs a villain. Ruthie is the only character who genuinely reinforces the film's themes. Her desire for revenge gives Kara someone to where she can confront her own anger and trauma. But Ruthie is so bland personality-wise that the relationship never becomes as emotionally powerful as it should. Fan service isn't just a way to make fans clap like trained seals because they recognize something. It can also be a way to give fans things that greatly benefit a story. This plays into the idea that studios need to understand the concept of... Now, there are two parts to understanding an audience. The first is knowing what they want, but the second, and arguably more important when hundreds of millions of dollars are involved, is making sure an audience actually exists for what you're selling. Judging by its box office, Spider-Man Brand New Day has appealed to everyone and their mother, but I think the film speaks particularly to young men. One of the main purposes of superheroes is giving people someone to aspire to. Spider-Man does that, but what separates him from most is how painfully relatable he is. He has incredible powers, but underneath the mask, he's just some guy. He's broke, his relationships are falling apart, he's trying to find direction, make something of himself, and balance what everyone expects from him against what he personally wants. That struggle is going to resonate with a lot of young men right now. Many are struggling financially, becoming increasingly isolated, and desperate for some kind of meaningful connection. So when Brand New Day presents itself as a story about Peter confronting those exact burdens, audiences already have an emotional reason to care. Supergirl's marketing, meanwhile, feels super outdated. I'm sorry. It leaned heavily into Kara being rebellious, drunk, reckless, and completely unconcerned with what anyone thinks of her. And after years of audiences rejecting shallow girl boss characters, presenting her almost entirely through that attitude was always going to be risky. To be fair, I think a lot of the criticism aimed at this movie, and at Millie Alcock specifically, has been unnecessarily ugly and sometimes completely dishonest. Kara isn't an invincible Mary Sue. She is irresponsible, emotionally closed off, and forced to become a better person throughout the story. There is real character work here, but the marketing rarely communicated that. Instead, it sold the surface level image of a carefree intergalactic party girl without explaining the trauma, loneliness, or emotional journey underneath it. Even when the official trailer came out for the movie giving more context for this stuff, the damage was already done due to the teaser and the overall marketing beforehand. It made it feel like an edgy comedy when it never should have been. The problem isn't that an audience for female superheroes can exist. It clearly can. The problem is that Hollywood repeatedly assumes putting a woman at the center of a blockbuster automatically guarantees women will support it. They won't. Women in their 20s are not one interchangeable audience waiting for anything marketing as empowering. Movies and shows like Barbie, Bridgerton, and The Summer I Turned Pretty succeeded because they understood their particular audiences and gave them specific emotional experiences they were already looking for. Supergirl needed to do the same. Marvel spent years building familiarity with its characters across men and women. DC was asking audiences to invest in a largely unfamiliar version of Kara during only the second film of a brand new universe. That's a much harder sell. Both men and women have shown Hollywood that they're starving for stories that reflect something real about their lives. Brand New Day understood that Peter's loneliness and lack of direction could speak directly to its audience. Supergirl had similarly powerful material involving grief and emotional isolation, but it never found a convincing way to sell that material to people who might have connected with it. There may absolutely be a place for Supergirl in this universe, but before DC can expect audiences to follow characters simply because they carry a familiar logo, it has to build trust, establish emotional investment, and understand exactly who each project is made for. You cannot serve an audience by merely assuming they will appear. With projects like Doomsday coming out, I'm still cautious about the future of Marvel. We've had zero build-up for this character, and with the inclusion of actors like RDJ and Chris Evans, it makes me wonder if Marvel is doing fan service for the sake of it. I don't know, we'll see. But with Brand New Day and how they really took the time to learn what fans have been asking for, I think it proves that superhero fatigue is not the problem. People are sick of bad storytelling. DC has some of, if not the greatest superheroes and villains of all time, but the reason they fail isn't because audiences have seen it before. It's because we've been burned so many times by this studio. I understand James Gunn wanting to course correct the storm Zack Snyder created and what followed after his leadership. But in the process of trying to fix the past, he hasn't successfully given us a reason to be on board with this new DCU. Like I said, I loved last year's Superman, but what are we doing following it up with a character that casual audiences barely know, and an R-rated body horror film on a character audiences definitely don't know? Not only do they need heavy hitters like Batman and Wonder Woman to generate hype, but it needs to be building towards something, like a Justice League movie. I get it would look like they're just trying to copy Marvel's Phase 1 and what Zack Snyder did to a degree, but as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The DCU desperately needs something like the MCU Phase 1 if they want any chance of success going forward, which means they can't just be making whatever they want. They need to be listening to what fans want to see. They want a fantastical Batman with a Bat family. They want a Wonder Woman with an actor who can actually act.
Kal-El, no! Kal-El, no! Kal-El, no!
The audience doesn't want Creature Commandos, and based on recent reception, they don't want Supergirl, at least at the moment. Despite the issues Marvel currently has going forward, I'm at least comforted in the hope that they're trying to at least listen to what fans have wanted based on the success of Brand New Day. I just hope DC can do the same.